For this offseason, many of the Detroit Lions faithful have been absolutely wondering when Brad Holmes is going to continue to add more to the defensive side of the football. But there are rumblings that the Lions could actually be looking to do something in the very opposite direction. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So, folks, I know that for this offseason, the word has been defense. Defense, defense, defense. That's all virtually anybody's been talking about. And I'm not saying that with a taste of disdain in my mouth. I'm saying that because that's the facts. Virtually everybody's been talking about the defense, and there's good reason for it. The Lions, obviously, from what they've been trying to do, they've been trying to, make sure they keep core pieces in town, but they're also trying to upgrade certain areas, like they did when they signed DJ Reed to replace Carlton Davis. Now, I know, though, for a lot of Lions fans, what they're wanting to hear, what they're waiting to hear, is when are we going to get another defensive end or edge rusher? That's what they're wanting to hear. And unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say it, I don't think the Lions are going to make a move for another defensive end or edge rusher until probably the draft. And it's not because I myself don't want one. I just think that the way that the Lions have set themselves up, they're going to address the main issue that a lot of Lions fans have when the draft gets here. Because again, as I've stated, this draft is loaded with edge rushers and defensive ends that the Lions can definitely use to get after the passer. So it makes better sense to go there and, get a good player that's not going to break the bank. So that way, then you can continue to build the roster the way the Lions have done it over the last, 4 years, which is draft, develop, re-sign. That's been the Lions' MO for the last 4 years, and I'll be honest, I'm thankful that it's their new MO, rather than what they've been trying to do over the last 20-something years. But this episode is rather to talk about the rumors, the rumblings I keep hearing about the Lions making an unexpected move on the other side of the ball, which is the offense. Now, I know that seems almost hard to believe considering the fact the Lions had the best offensive attack last year, and it wasn't even close. Then on top of that, if you take a look over the last couple of years, they've had one of the best offensive attacks. And I know also people are going to be like, why are we even talking about offense here? All we're wanting to talk about is defense. Well, again, you have to kind of go where the news is telling you of the day, and the news keeps telling me that, hey, the Lions might be making an unexpected move in the offensive direction. Now, I know that's not exactly what some people want to hear, but there is actually a reason, there is actually some logic as to why the Lions would want to do this. So what exactly is prompting this? Why would the Lions even want to add more firepower? The main answer, in my honest opinion, is to ensure that you lessen injuries to your star playmakers and you add more ways for this offense to exploit defenses by having multiple options to get the ball to. And in this case, we're going to be talking about the receiving element. The supposed rumblings that I keep hearing are that the Lions are potentially wanting to add another wide receiver to ensure they have depth in the case of injury to one of their playmakers. And to be fair, this kind of makes sense. Last year we were without Khalif Raymond for quite a bit of time. We also had a couple of games where, Jamo was dealing with some injuries and so on and so forth. So it actually makes sense that the Lions would want to add another option to ensure that what receivers they have are not overly exposed to injury, and in the case that if somebody does get injured, they have a backup option. But as with any player, the Lions are going to only want players that fit their scheme and, more importantly, their culture. Hard workers, gritty, smart. Okay, so what is the supposed idea that's being floated around the water cooler? The idea that I keep hearing is former Seahawks wide receiver Tyler Lockett. Now, Tyler Lockett, this is a guy that definitely is a very interesting, element that you could put into this Lions offense. Let's first and foremost take a look at him. When you take a look at Lockett, he was a long-time staple for the Seahawks offense. Lockett is about as sure-handed of a receiver as they come, and he's still very much an offensive threat, despite the fact that he's 33 years old. So yes, this guy's a little bit of the over-the-hill gang, but the Lions have been rumored to have interest in him due to the fact that he is a sure-handed wide receiver, due to the fact that he still can make a difference in the offense, and because of the fact that he's a veteran and the fact that, ever since he's been released by the Seahawks, it doesn't seem there's a whole lot of interest in trying to get him, which means he could probably be had for cheap. Now, what is there about Lockett we need to know elsewise? Lockett is primarily a slot receiver at this point in his career. So, that would seem to show that his use is limited in the Lions offense. However, let me put this out there. It does present an interesting option for the Lions because what we know is that when it comes to the slot element of our offense, Amon-Ra St. Brown plays a very decent amount of his time out of the slot. But he also plays on the outside as well. So, what I'm trying to get at here is if you were to bring Lockett in, you could use him primarily in the slot and allow Amon-Ra St. Brown to play more outside, where he's also thrived. Because practically wherever St. Brown lines up, he thrives. There's no question about that. This also then presents two great opportunities for the Lions offense because Lockett, despite the fact that he's older, does not mean that he does not have the ability to get open. This guy is a very crafty, very savvy vet. He knows how to get open. He knows how to make plays for the offense. And being a slot guy, he does not have to be the fastest guy on the field. So that actually kind of plays well to his strengths in the fact that he is up there in years. But let me say this as well. By using Lockett in the slot element, it also means that Amon-Ra St. Brown is not going to have to get as exposed as much to the constant hits over the middle and spare his health long term. One of the things I know about slot guys is that since they're in the slot, they're usually going over the middle the most. And I know this as well. When you're going over the middle as a wide receiver, you're definitely keeping one eye where that freaking linebacker or safety's at because you're wondering, okay, when am I about to get popped? This is part of the reason I like Lockett because one of the things that Lockett has done over the course of his career is that rather than risk getting a big hit, he will just get down and take what the offense gets, takes what he can get. Now, I know some people might call that being a coward or being a chicken. I call that being smart. Because it's like, listen, the way that players hit these days, it's almost like you're getting in a mini car accident sometimes. So it's better to just pick up what you can, which in that kind of element, you're getting like 10 to 11 yards anyway. So for me, that makes a lot of sense. And by making sure Lockett's the one that's primarily having to deal with that and not as much Amon-Ra St. Brown, you spare Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's our, big-time paid wide receiver right now, from potentially getting injured. The other thing that it allows the Lions to do is it allows the Lions to find even more creative ways to allow their receivers to get involved. Because think about it. If you were to add Lockett, what do we now have for our wide receiver room? Okay, Amon-Ra St. Brown is our all-around wide receiver. He can do everything. You have J-Mo, who's your gadget deep play guy, your big play guy. Okay, you have Tim Patrick, who we just re-signed. He's your big-bodied, red zone threat kind of guy. And then Lockett would be your primary slot guy. You've now got every single element from the receiving room completely covered. You have a primary slot guy. You have an all-around guy. You have a big red zone guy. You also have a big play, kind of guy, a deep play threat. That would be the best receiving core element in the entirety of the NFL. And that's not even including Khalif Raymond, who can also play in relief at times. But from what I understand, the Lions are wanting to primarily more use him in the return game because that's where he makes a really big difference for us. And then the other thing about Lockett is that he would also bring even more experience to the receiving room, which could only help the young but talented duo of J-Mo and obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown. So, there's actually a lot of things about this that I could actually see being, a good move for the Lions. But the other reason why I think this would be a good move for the Lions, a good fit for them, is because that as a slot guy, Lockett and Goff would almost immediately hit it off. One thing we know about Goff, other than the fact that he loves throwing to tight ends, is he also loves throwing to the slot. And that primarily works the middle of the field. Well, what's another thing we know about Goff? Goff works the middle of a defense better than any quarterback in the league. Like, he thrives throwing the ball into the middle of the field, especially against zone coverage. And then, you also have to think about this as well. Slot wide receivers also thrive in play action passing as well. Which, what's another thing we know about Jared Goff? Oh, that's right. Goff is the play action king. So let's just analyze this for a minute. First and foremost, let's go back to last year when Amon-Ra St. Brown played in the slot for the Detroit Lions and when Goff was throwing to him. Last year when Goff threw to Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot, St. Brown had 43 receptions, which was tied for 11th. He had 57 targets, which means he had a 75.4 receiving percentage, which was third best. He had 517 yards, which was sixth. He had a 12 and average a catch, which was tied second. He had 7 receiving touchdowns, ranked number 1. He had only 1 interception that was attributed to him as a receiver, which meant that his overall passer rating for Goff was 135, best in the league. That right there ought to tell you something. That right there is huge. That means Goff uses the slot a hell of a lot. Now, why do I think Lockett would be a good fit to help make some of, take some of this, off of primarily Amon-Ra St. Brown, but also J-Mo? Because J-Mo also sometimes slides into the slot position. It's because of this reason. Go back to when Lockett was in Seattle from 2019 to 2022. In those 4 years, Lockett had 4 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Now, I'm going to say this right now. I'm not expecting Lockett to have a 1,000-yard receiving season if he were to get signed at the Lions. Not at this point. That's just crazy. But there is a reason why I'm bringing this up. If you take a look at those 4 years, Lockett spent almost 60% of his time in the slot during that time. It was 57.5% to be actual. So think about it. In the 4 years that he had the most production ever in his career, he spent almost 60% of his time in the slot. That's an interesting trend right there, if you ask me. So then I decided to take it up and do some more research, look it up, and see what was going on here. From 2019 to 2022, this is what Lockett did in the slot during those years. He had 174 completions to 234 targets, which was for a 74.4 completion percentage rate, or reception rate, sorry. He had 2,202 yards, 9.4 an average a catch, 13 touchdowns. He had 7 interceptions over those 4 years. He also had a 109.3 passer rating attributed to the quarterbacks that were throwing to him. That was Tyler Lockett from the slot over those 4 years. That's some pretty damn good numbers over 4 straight years. Now, I know some people are going to be a little bit dismayed about the fact that it's a 2-to-1 interception ratio, but let's understand who was throwing to him. You had an aging Russell Wilson, and then you had Geno Smith. Now, don't get me wrong, Geno Smith is an okay quarterback, but he ain't no Jared Goff. And Russell Wilson, while he might have a Super Bowl, by this time in his career, he ain't no Jared Goff either. So what it tells me is that since Goff is so prolific with his slot receivers, it would pretty much tell me that if we were to bring in Lockett on a 1-year deal, probably for like maybe $4 or $5 million, something like that, there would probably be a very good chance, a good opportunity, that Goff could probably turn back the clock for Lockett for 1 year, which would supplement the Lions' offense even further because now you have another weapon. And now, as I also stated, I'm going to wrap this up. Lockett would also help the Lions in their play-action game. We already know the Lions have one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. And like I said before, with bringing in Tashard Choice and, having John Morton and everybody else there, I have no doubt that it's going to even get better this year. But a slot wide receiver for the play-action game is something that absolutely is going to be something that Goff loves. Because what happens? When you have an absolutely dynamic, explosive, deadly play-action game, it adds heightened pressure on the defense. Well, think about it. The Lions' offense already makes defenses very stressed because of all the weapons they already have. Now you add one more like Lockett, who, like I said, is about as sure-handed as they get, and is still a menace as a guy that's in the middle of the field. That is just going to benefit Goff even further when it comes to the play-action element. Because again, if you take a look at how Goff was in 2024 off of play-action, it was like a virtual damn cheat code. In 2024 off of play action, Jared Goff was ranked second in completion percentage with almost 75%. Had almost 2,100 passing yards, which was ranked first. 10.1 average a throw, tied second. 15 touchdowns, tied second. 7.3 touchdown percentage, ranked fourth. And had the third best passer rating at 120.7. Dude, that's a damn cheat code right there. And if you put Tyler Lockett, who's a slot receiver guy, who knows how to get open, who's very crafty, and you put those two together, and you still have all these other guys roaming around, St. Brown, Patrick, J-Mo, Laporta, dude, there's no defense that can cover all that. I don't care who the hell you are. You would be like literally scrambling trying to figure it out. Because here, I'm going to show you this last little bit too. This comes from Next Gen Stats. This is Jared Goff's QB grid from 2024. You ought to notice something really quickly here. Notice in the middle of the field from the line of scrimmage to, I think it's like 10 yards out and then 10 yards to 20 yards out, something like that. You're going to see a nice big patch of green. That means that Jared Goff was well above the league average. That is exactly where Lockett would thrive, and that's exactly where Goff thrives. So to me, it's like, okay, if you can get Lockett, you bring him in on a vet minimum deal, maybe a $3, $4, $5 million deal over a 1-year contract, and it's incentive-based, that would be a great signing. Because now you have completely supplemented the wide receiver core, you've made sure you have good solid depth, you've brought in yet another weapon, and it's somebody that Goff can easily build a rapport with because Lockett has been doing this for years with multiple quarterbacks. So it's like, hey, you know what? He should be fine. So for me, it's like, hey, I know it's not an edge rusher or a defensive end, but are you honestly going to really get all huffy and puffy about the fact that we got a guy like Lockett to add even more firepower to this offense when we're probably going to add another edge rusher in the freaking draft anyway, and then there's always the second wave of free agency to boot? Again, the Lions do have to be conservative with money, but at the same time, they're also trying to make sure they have the best roster possible. They're not going to go out and spend $30 million on a Trey Hendrickson. But hey, you can go into the draft and get one of the best draft edge rushers, and you can only spend $5, maybe $7 million a year. That makes a hell of a lot more sense. And it allows you to allocate resources elsewhere while still being able to roll over cap going into next year, so that way you can sign those upcoming guys like Campbell, Gibbs, Branch, Laporta. Just saying. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to put this episode together because I kept hearing this story and I figured I might as well take a look at it, see what it has to say, and let the merit speak for itself. So having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon. Also want to encourage y'all, please, to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you possibly can. The more we can do that, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that being said, I hope y'all got something out of the content. I hope y'all enjoyed it, whether it's the first time you're watching me or you guys have been watching me forever and a day. Also hope you all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.